main characters seem to need a leader, or at least there's always a third man who thinks they're better than everyone else, so they take the initiative and adopt command. They're not always good at it, but convinced they're acting in everyone's best interests. That is, until events conspire against them due to overreaching or under-planning. Luther Hobbo Hobdyke is not included in this episode. While he becomes a third man, his arrival starts a new, albeit very short era, of the show. He is part of an ensemble that had been created like a boy band and a reality TV show, unlike the members of the former trios that were all old school friends. The first third man of the trio, and the most confrontational and arrogant, is Blamire. He had the first line in the first episode of Series 1. He said, "I daren't face the future," which resulted in Compo declaring his granny could see into the future. Michael Bates was born and spent his early years in India. He was sent to England for school and college, then in 1942 he was commissioned in the Indian Army. During the Second World War he served in the Burma campaign as a major with the Brigade of Gurkhas. Bates had many supporting roles in films but made his mark playing a variety of characters in the BBC's long-running radio comedy series The Navy Lark. His role as Ranji Ram in It Ain't Half Hot Mum led to controversy due to allegations that he performed in blackface. The show is not repeated in the UK by the BBC, who used the blacked up description of Bates's performance on their archived website article about the series. Bates's film roles include Oh What a Lovely War and Patton. He played in Shakespeare and was Inspector Truscott in the West End production of Loot by Joe Orton. Blamire had served as a corporal storeman in the Royal Signals Regiment and retains his military bearing. He's a Tory and self-important know-it-all with upper-class aspirations. Despite this, he does not seem to have his own home and has lived here as a lodger for 12 years. He also has the indignity of being required to walk his landlady's tiny terrier dog. He often disassociates himself from the others, especially Compo, as he considers himself superior. Blamire is the counterpoint to Compo's lacklustre layabout, fired up by displays of youthful enthusiasm, energetic gusto or any sign of the British spirit. Because of his sophisticated interests and insistence on table manners, Compo refers to him as a puff. Cyril, in turn, will often describe Compo from a lexicon of derogatory insults, including such things as grotty little Herbert. Cyril often reprimands Compo whenever he addresses him as Cyril, as he prefers the more rounded tones of Mr. Blamire, and says that Compo has to touch his tatty cap whenever he does so. Out of all the third men, Blamire tolerates Compo's antics the least. Regardless of this, Compo is shown to miss Blamire in the episodes immediately after he leaves. Bates left the cast in 1975 due to cancer that left him too ill to perform in any long-term projects aside from It Ain't Half Hot Mum. So Blamire was written out of the series. It's said that he left to get married. The last we hear of him is a very organised letter instructing Clegg and Compo to meet their old classmate, Foggy Dewhurst. Michael Bates died of cancer on the 11th of January 1978 at the Royal Marsden Hospital in Chelsea, London. The successor to Blamire is Foggy, another former soldier who likes to boast of his exploits in Burma during the Second World War. Except Foggy was a sign writer, and unlike Blamire, most of his stories were fictional. Brian Wilde was brought up in Devon and Hertfordshire and trained as an actor at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. His early television work included supporting Tony Hancock in an episode of his ATV series in 1963. Wilde had several minor and major film roles up to 1967. His first major television success was in 1970 with the ITV sitcom The Dustbin Men as depot manager Bloody Delilah. Then he appeared in an episode of 7 of 1, a series of 7 individual stories, all of which starred Ronnie Barker. In the episode entitled Prisoner and Escort, Wilde played Mr. Barraclough. A series was commissioned by the BBC, titled Porridge, and Wilde reprised his role as the timid, naive Barraclough for the series. In 1976, he took over from Michael Bates as the third man of Summer Wine. Although Walter Foggy Dewhurst considers himself very regimental and heroic, when confronted he's generally meek and incompetent. He is well-meaning but misguided. He considers himself to have been a warrior in his army days, but when he says, "just don't ask me to talk about it," he's clearly desperate to ask, and he's disappointed that no one does ask. He tells tales of how he was admired by the native guides in the jungle and mimics their voices when he describes the heroic names they gave him. Roy Clark's script avoids controversial stereotypes by giving the characters in Foggy's stories high-pitched voices rather than imitating any language characteristics. Like all the third men, Foggy considers himself the leader of the trio and frequently takes charge of Compo and Clegg. Foggy is infamous for his overambitious solutions to the trio's everyday problems, often making them worse. He plans their misadventures with military precision and a painstaking eye for detail, except it isn't always precise and the details are botched. In early series, Foggy is known for his trance-like moments where he freezes for 10 seconds or so. He claims it's a planning session while he considers a situation to formulate a plan. It's not clear if Foggy is really going into some sort of trance or if he's just ignoring everybody while he thinks. Foggy never married and laments the loss of all things British as he sees the orderly culture and society of his younger days irreversibly slipping away. In common with Blamire, Foggy dislikes Compo's unkempt appearance and slovenliness, and often addresses Compo as him or that man. However, even Compo had to compliment Foggy in the Series 17 episode Leaving Home Forever or Till Tea Time, saying, "He may be a twit, but that's got to admit he has a go." Foggy did suffer an injury, not due to any of their madcap antics. While giving directions to Clegg, who was reversing a car, Clegg runs over his foot, causing Foggy to spend the rest of the episode in a wheelchair. When Wilde left the series in 1985 to pursue other TV work, it was explained that Foggy had moved to Bridlington to take over his family's souvenir egg painting business. In 1988, Wilde starred in his own BBC TV series Wyatt's Watchdogs as retired soldier Major Wyatt, who had similar characteristics to Foggy. The programme only ran for one series of 6 episodes. When his successor, Seymour Utterthwaite, played by Michael Aldridge, left in 1990, Wilde returned as Foggy. He claims he is tired of painting eggs and wanted to return to his old life. Foggy would often be seen buttonholing a stranger and then rambling about his supposed military career, each stranger clearly eager to escape. He climbs on this bus shelter to demonstrate to one hapless individual how a sniper could get a good vantage point. He often explains that he was a trained killer, which eventually, inevitably, leads to him being arrested in the Series 15 episode, Have You Got a Light, Mate? In 1997, when illness stopped Wilde taking part, he was written out of the series in the special There Goes the Groom, in which his character, performed by his double Colin Harris, was in a drunken stupor and so never spoke and was never seen clearly. This episode also introduced his successor, Herbert Truly of the Yard, Truelove. Producer Alan Bell said, since then, Brian has been invited to return many times, but he says he feels he has done it now and doesn't want to go back. I'm sure that one day he'll make an appearance. We still have his costume standing by. Wilde never did return, and the show ran for another 13 years, the last series being filmed the year after Wilde died. Brian Wilde suffered a fall in January 2008 from which he never recovered. He died in his sleep on the 20th of March 2008 at his home in Ware, Hertfordshire. The first success to Foggy Dewhurst is the previously unheard of brother of Edie Pegden, Seymour Utterthwaite. In 1986, with Foggy off to paint eggs, Michael Aldridge arrives as the snobby ex-headmaster. The son of a doctor, Michael Aldridge was educated at Gresham's School, Holt, Norfolk, where he acted in school plays. His professional acting career began in August 1939 at the Palace Theatre, Watford, appearing in Terence Rattigan's play French Without Tears, just before the Second World War broke out. So in 1940 he joined the Royal Air Force, leaving the service in 1945 as a flight lieutenant. After the war, Aldridge returned to acting, but it was not until 1954 that his career started to gain him recognition. On television, an early significant role was in the Granada TV series The Man in Room 17 and its sequel, The Fellows. In 1975, Aldridge appeared as Jeeves in the Andrew Lloyd Webber and Alan Ayckbourn musical Jeeves. The show was a rare flop, and the negative critical reaction led to Aldridge giving up his stage career to concentrate on television and film roles. In the 1986 special Uncle of the Bride, Clegg and Compo were introduced to Seymour Utterthwaite by his brother-in-law, Wesley Pegden. Seymour is a self-proclaimed mechanical genius and inventor, and feels it's his duty to educate the masses, including Compo and Clegg. While Foggy tried to solve problems, Seymour feels the need to invent things. Compo, who is always the reluctant test subject, often suffers as a result. Despite this, Clegg and Compo tolerate him, and he seems more than willing to play along with their childish antics than his predecessors. His sister Edie always speaks very highly of him and how he was educated, failing to consider his catalogue of failed inventions. In the series 10 episode, Downhill Racer, Nora Batty undermines Edie's bragging about Seymour's intellect by pointing out that their grandmother was on the education committee, so she could have influenced his selection for grammar school. Seymour lives in this house outside the town. He had previously been the headmaster of a school, although it's not entirely clear how successful he was in running it. He now runs the Utterthwaite Postal University, but that does not seem to be going well either. Seymour appears to take an unhealthy delight in corporal punishment and is appalled to hear that it's been prohibited. When Compo and Clegg are in his home, Seymour often treats them like children. However, his condescending manner towards Compo and Clegg does not seem to deter them from being around him. His home is modified into a laboratory filled with contraptions that seldom, if ever, seem to work. Seymour usually blames the failure of his inventions on divine punishment for once having had an affair with a barmaid. Because Seymour's inventions are always built poorly, he normally gets Wesley to fix them, or just gets Wesley to build them in the first place, much to Wesley's annoyance. Wesley has the right idea about him and refers to Seymour as a pillock, but not in earshot of Edie. When Aldridge left the show in 1990 to nurse his sick wife, Seymour is last seen leaving on a bus to take up a new job as interim headmaster at a private school, just as previous third man, Foggy, returns. There were apparently plans for Seymour to return, but Michael Aldridge died on the 10th of January 1994. The second successor to Foggy is Herbert, truly of the yard, Truelove, a retired policeman. Trevor Bannister suggested Thornton for the role, which was only originally expected to be a short while Brian Wilde recovered from an illness. Frank Thornton wanted to act from an early age. His father wanted him to get a proper job, so he began working in insurance after leaving school. He soon enrolled in evening classes at the London School of Dramatic Art. He made his professional debut, aged 19, in Terence Rattigan's play French Without Tears. He enlisted in the RAF and trained as a navigator, and joined the RAF Entertainment Unit and was discharged in 1947. Thornton starred in BBC radio comedies and appeared in TV sitcoms such as Hancock, Sykes and The Goodies. He worked with Dick Emery, Benny Hill, Frankie Howard, Harry Worth, Spike Milligan and Michael Bentine in their comedy shows, and appeared in Steptoe & Son during its first run from 1962 to 1965. He continued to appear in films, mostly comedies, during the 1960s and 1970s, including Carry On Screaming and The Bed-Sitting Room. From 1972 to 1985, he played Captain Peacock in Are You Being Served? Frank Thornton was the subject of This Is Your Life in 1998. Truly is a pompous ex-police officer taking out his notebook more often than necessary. Because of his time in the police force, Truly refers to himself as Truly of the Yard. He claims he had been in the Vice Squad, a position that apparently often required him to dress as a woman, including a wig and makeup. So it's no surprise he was also once misheard and thought to have said he was Trudy of the Yard. Truly is divorced and makes disparaging comments about the former Mrs. Truelove. They had been married for 37 years. Evidently she feels the same way about him, according to her new husband who appears in the Series 24 episode The Second Husband and the Showgirls. The former Mrs. Truelove is an unseen character apart from a photograph Truly keeps in his wallet. He says it shows her best side. The photo is the back of her head. Truly can be a bit devious with practical jokes and witty schemes. In the Series 28 episode, What Happened to the Horse, it's Truly's idea to convince Howard there's a secluded spot that no one ever visits due to the alleged presence of the ghost of the tinker Irish Johnny. Howard arranges to meet Marina at the secluded wooded area, but Truly has arranged for the tinker to appear in the form of Alvin in costume and ghostly makeup. In the final two series, Frank Thornton and Peter Sallis reduced their involvement due to their age and difficulty getting insurance for location filming, so they were restricted to scenes in the studio. The role of Third Man was then taken by Russ Abbott's character Luther Hobbo Hobdyke. Frank Thornton died from natural causes on the 16th of March 2013 at his home in Barnes, London.